Hello, my beautiful sisters. Welcome again. This is November 2018, and we have Alexandra Pope and Sjani here, and they are the authors of Wild Power, Discover the Magic of Your Menstrual Cycle and Awaken the Feminine Path to Power. Mind you, I started reading this book just because I was interested in my own menstrual cycle, and I was figuring out what to do with it in general. I was normally on birth control, and this is the first month that I've been off it, and I had so many questions that I just had to contact them. And they were so amazing that they accepted, and they were willing to do recordings with us, and I'm super excited for them to be here. So Alexandra, Sjani, thank you so much. I would love to hear a little bit about your backstory. I know that both of you are founders of Red School. And how did that start? How did you girls meet each other?
Oh, you tell the story, Alexandra. Because it starts with you. You tell us. You tell the story.
It starts a long time back in that I was in my very early 30s, Jaslyn, and I got the most outrageous menstrual pain, menstrual pain from hell, and it came back every month for 3, sometimes 4 days, and I wanted to heal my body naturally because I just wasn't into drugs and stuff. And I made the radical decision to believe in my body and follow it and give space to menstruation. And I was a working girl. I had a job and, things to go, responsibilities and so on. But somehow I started to really organize my life around my cycle, to really listen to my body. And the rest is history. Here we are now, standing over 35 years later with Red School, Sjani and I working together. And I met Sjani. Sjani came to one of my first workshops in London because I was in Australia at the time, and I used to come over to see my family because my family are in England. And she came to one of my early workshops. And then when I returned to live in England 10 years ago, we connected up again in a serendipitous way. So it was all destined. The universe had it marked out. And we met up again, and we just, it was like sort of combustion. We just took off with ideas, and Red School was, eventually born. So Sjani, do you want to just say a little bit about what Red School does?
Well, yeah, let me quickly tell you my piece of the story, because my journey to this work was slightly different in that I was on contraception. I was on the contraceptive, well, I tried the pill, but only I think I lasted for about 1 month, and I got so angry. I just felt so much rage. I thought, this is not working for me. And then the next thing that was offered to me was the contraceptive injection. And I thought I was being really canny by going on contraception and making sure I didn't get pregnant. I was being responsible and all that. And I was on the contraceptive injection for 7 years, and it completely stopped your menstrual cycle. And shut me down, deadened me. And, it was a sort of a low level. I didn't feel that great. But the thing that really got my attention was, and this was sort of towards the end of 7 years, was I started experiencing pain after orgasm. And so much so that I almost didn't want to have an orgasm, which is a really good way to get my attention. I was like, oh, really need to sort this out. It was very interesting. Some kind of tension had formed in my system that was really kind of clogging me up. And I realized, I knew it was a contraceptive injection. I just had a hunch. I had a hunch for a while that something wasn't right. And when I came off it, that was when I really started to see, by comparison, once my cycle started to return, it was like this life woke up in me. Something, it was my intuition came back, my emotional life came back. I suddenly felt connected to meaning and purpose in my life. And that was actually the thing that led me to that workshop that Alexandra was running, because I got curious about my cycle, and she was the only person in the dark ages, way back then, teaching about the power of the menstrual cycle. So I discovered her. My cycle led me to her. My cycle leads me everywhere I go now. It's like my inner guidance system. It led me to her. Yeah, exactly. It led me to her. It led us to have that reuniting when she came back to England. And then it's really guided us every step of the way in the whole kind of creative process of bringing this work into the world and then forming Red School. So we both have a background in psychotherapy, and I was trained in hypnotherapy as well, and I had a speciality in fertility. And Alexandra's written a book on the pill and has done lots of work with women in Australia. And then we came to kind of finally form Red School, and all the way along, my cycle has been our template really for how we work at Red School and what we offer. And of course, it's the topic of everything that we teach and write about now. So we run workshops and training programs. We run a leadership program, which is a really in-depth exploration of the power of the cycle, which happens over sort of a year. And we do 2 modules with that. So it's a very deep dive into the power of the cycle.
That's amazing.
And online courses and all those kinds of things. So we're pretty obsessed with the cycle, as you know.
And I think there's a good reason for that matter. Now, that you mentioned that you're obsessed with the cycle, while reading your book, I learned about the menstrual cycle awareness, right? And I know that that's huge with your work and with Red School for that matter. So can you give me a breakdown of what is menstrual cycle awareness and why is it important?
Yeah, well, as I was saying, how my cycle has led me and continues to lead me in my life, it's really been this thing of paying attention to the cycle day in, day out, and inviting other women to pay attention to the cycle that has unfolded everything that we teach at Red School. Attention to our cycle has brought knowledge of the cycle to the foreground, and slowly we've been piecing that together. And as you know, we write about these maps of the cycle and all this detailed information that has all come out of women's experiences of their cycle, and it's all come out of women paying attention to their cycle. So the menstrual cycle in itself is a wonderful thing. However, when you add this magic ingredient of attention and really noticing what happens inside you day after day after day after day, that is when the power of the cycle starts to take up residence in your life and starts to really impact and influence the kind of choices you make and the way you care for yourself and your creative life and your calling. Really wakes up through this attention to your cycle. So I just wanted to start by saying that this is everything when it comes to, the power of the cycle, attention to the cycle. And we formally named it. We decided this is so important, we need to give it a name. It's called Menstrual Cycle Awareness, and it's a practice. It's a woman's spiritual practice. It's a thing that we believe all women need to learn from the get-go, and it needs to just be a part of our daily thing, just what we women do. We just pay attention to our cycle in a quiet kind of way. So there you go. That's the intro. Alexandra, you give us the juice.
So beautiful at describing cycle, but I will describe it. So yes, well, when I was way back in the dark ages having this outrageous menstrual pain, I was, and decided to believe in and follow my cycle, I was sort of practicing a sort of early prototype of cycle awareness. At that time, it was fairly basic. It was really noting when menstruation was due, and then giving myself space and time around menstruation. So I was fortunate in that my cycle was regular, almost to the 28th day. There would be little glitches now and then, but it was regular. So I would always have in my diary, when menstruation was due, roughly. So that was a very rough beginning. But what we mean by cycle awareness is a woman actually noting where she is in her cycle every day. And it's like a mindfulness practice, Jaslyn, of it might be you wake up in the morning, and even in the morning you'll just notice a sort of atmosphere or tone in yourself, a feeling tone. And you just want to make a little note of that. It might be a mental note initially, although we do insist that you find some way of writing it down, because that's where the magic comes, because then you look back over previous cycles and you start to see the pattern. So you kind of just note your energy and so on. You might make a little note, and then you go about your business kind of mindful of this dominant note of mood and energy. And then at the end of the day, you also do a sort of a mood check, like a little weather report on yourself, a little rain check on yourself at the end of the day, and go, how was today? Oh, today I noticed I was bouncing off the walls today. Or it might be, geez, it was really hard. All I wanted to do was go under the duvet, the doona, whatever you call it in the States, under the bed covers, It might have been that kind of day you had. So each aspect of the cycle is going to have different tone, feeling, energy, and so on. And so you start to note this each day of your cycle. And then if someone, because, it's a great club you join when you do cycle awareness, and you come up, what day of your cycle you're on? Oh, day 22. And then the other person will know immediately, oh, yeah, day 22. Okay. That's or they might say day 3, and you go, yes, you'll be vulnerable today. Give her a hard time today.
It's so nice, isn't it? It's this like common language that we women share. It's this your whole vocabulary and way of understanding each other and really getting each other. The cycle awareness brings that. It's such a bonding, connecting way of being for us women. So it's just lovely like that. Alexandra, can I just add something to what you have said? Because what you've been describing about cycle awareness is the sort of emotional tracking of the mood and energy, which is really everything. But I just want to go back to what you first said, which is this practice of cycle awareness for you. When it started, your early prototype of it was just like noticing when menstruation was due. So I actually want to backpedal to that point, because let's not take for granted that everybody just knows the biology and physicality of their cycle. That's actually sort of step 1 of cycle awareness, is just getting to know the biology of your cycle and what day you're on, and when you're ovulating and when you're due to bleed. So for example, menstruation, the first day of full flow bleeding is day 1, and you count all the way from there back to 1 again, which is when you start to bleed. And just getting clued up about fertility awareness, when what are the signs of ovulation for you. This is not an area we teach on. You can go to other places for that, learning about fertility awareness, but I just want to say that's the first thing, is just getting to know the body literacy of your cycle. And then that's your kind of foundation map. And then the next level is checking in with your mood and energy and your weather forecast for the day, like Alexandra was saying.
So if we could put this in like a step-by-step format, you're saying to start off, like when your next menstrual cycle begins, right? That's day 1 for you, right? Yeah. And then from there, every morning and every night, you want them to pretty much explain like what their mood is, what they're feeling, what they're going through. Do you also mention any symptoms, like if they have backaches or cramps? Do they write that down as well?
That's a really good idea. Yeah, because that's part of checking in with the physicality of the cycle, is writing down some of your physical symptoms and how your body feels. Yeah, very good idea. And dreams.
And I also want to acknowledge sexual energy as well.
Sexual energy.
You'll start to notice that there's a pattern through the cycle of your sexual energy.
So if you're really turned on at the moment, or if you don't want sex at all, practically.
Exactly.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So so you just know, and I actually just really want to emphasize, because gosh, we women already have a ton of things to do, and we don't need another job.
Yeah.
So this can be a light touch, it can be, I think you've got a lovely chart you could hold up, Jaslyn, the menstrual chart. Can you hold that up now? Yeah, because it can just be just a few words that you put in for your day. And some women they use color and image, and then some women really go to town, but it can be very simple. It's really good to do it where you can see it all in a month, all in one go. But also you can use apps and so on. There's tons of ways of recording, but we want to make this easy and actually a little bit fun, because it is fun. It's what happens is you really start to see a pattern emerging, especially when you're into the second month. You go, oh wow, look. day 16, the same thing, same kind of energies happen. Or that's it. I fell off my perch, day 21. And I was powering ahead, and then suddenly, the ground went from under me. Oh, day 21, I'll just have to watch that one. So it's just really fun getting to know your pattern, and then noticing the pattern of your dreams connected to your cycle, and of course your sexual energy and your physical energy. And it's just this lovely mix of things. So that's the sort of first stage of cycle awareness, just this simple act of charting and noticing and kind of just getting to know yourself, really, because you're getting to notice more about your own character and nature too. And then the second stage of this is really starting to use your cycle to your advantage. It's like you have different kind of energies and different times of the month, and you kind of capitalize on that. So when, if you're sort of like, you feel like Superwoman around ovulation, so you might want to write in your diary the days of your cycle. So when you're booking things in the diary, you're looking at day 16 and going, wow, man, I could do 20 jobs that day, and everyone else's as well. And then another time you'll be booking your diary and you'll notice it's day 27. And day 27, or if you have a sort of fairly standard cycle of 28, 30 days, 28, day 27, 28, 29 are more vulnerable days where you probably feel more internal and perhaps slowed down, and you think to yourself, I don't think I'll organize my child's birthday party for that day, or maybe we won't have that big get together with the family, or the big meeting, or I think that's not the day to approach my boss for a pay rise. Or you get really smart and canny about how to use your energy. And all parts of the cycle are important. There's no one bit of the cycle that's better than another, although you may prefer other parts. We all have our favorite places in the cycle, and the places in the cycle where we don't feel so cool with ourselves.
If I may.
Yes.
So this is going to be, I'm on day 2 of my second month, officially, menstrual cycle awareness and going through it. So for everyone to know on my little story and to see if it relates to other people, for my first month, I was like just, doing stage 1 every morning, every night, going through it. I used a different chart besides this one. I think I'm going to use this one for the second month in particular, just because I like that it's all together. So the first month I tried an app, and it was called Flow. So I just put in all the information there, and it has notes so I can double check, day 1. Okay, let me go back to my day 1 on this side. But I kind of like just having a piece of paper for it. And now that I'm on day 2 now. Day 1, my boyfriend almost wanted to kill me. I skipped work yesterday because I was like but I was on birth control for 4 or 5 years. So I was more in this neutral state. So I follow you, Sjani, when you said that. I found myself in this neutral state. I was never like angry at day 20 or peaceful in, day 12. No. I was normal throughout the phase. And now my boyfriend says, yeah, normal. And now my boyfriend is like, okay, now you're an actual woman. Right? And he's like, now you're PMSing. I'm like, it's not called PMSing in my lifestyle, right? And I explained that to him. I had a whole conversation with him about it. So can you go a little bit into, PMS versus menstrual cycle awareness compared to, how people versus when they
actually, Sjani, that in a way segues in, that question really segues into the benefits of cycle awareness. Do you want to take it away?
Yeah, or actually I was gonna add another layer to cycle awareness. So we've got the charting of the physical, we've got the checking in every day with your mood and energy, and then we've got this thing of kind of planning your life around your cycle. The other piece of cycle awareness, the other step of it, is really noticing what your tendency is, or what it is you're most needing on any particular day. This is how you get in gear with your cycle, and instead of fighting against what you're feeling, you start to align with it and get into flow with it. So for example, day 27, day 28 tends to be, for a lot of women, a time when they feel like they want to hide away. time when they feel like they don't want to be in the public. They don't want to be out there and in the world. So so this is this piece of cycle awareness is actually giving yourself permission to follow that need, that desire, just tweaking your life in small ways to just give yourself, in that case, a little bit of privacy, a little bit of hideaway, a little bit of under the duvet moments, really letting yourself care for what your cycle is bringing you to, and it's bringing you inward. So give yourself some of that. So when you talk about like PMS versus cycle awareness, a lot of PMS happens because we aren't aware of our cycle. And because we aren't aware of where we are in our cycle, we aren't aware of our mood and energy, and we aren't aware of what our needs are. So we're fighting against ourselves, and we're trying to be something we're not, and that creates agitation, stress, tension in the system. We're going against the grain, very much like, try to stay awake all night. When your body is designed to sleep at night, it creates stress, it creates agitation, restlessness, irritability, blah, 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 blah. A lot of the things we associate with PMS are very much the same. If we don't go with the day-night rhythm, if we don't go with the cycle rhythm, it disturbs us in this way. So when you start practicing cycle awareness, you start to get in the flow of your cycle, and you start to go with your mood and energy more and more and more and more. And a lot of that stress and tension will start to fall away. One of the big things in that part of the cycle, so in the lead up to the bleed, in the premenstruum, the time when a lot of women experience PMS, like disturbance, that time of the cycle is really calling us to slow down, actually. It's calling us to rest a little bit more and take a little bit more space for us. Now, our culture is very fast. We live very busy lives. There's just so much going on, right? It can be a real pull to stay busy and keep producing and keep doing stuff, and then we're fighting ourselves, you see, and so that starts to cause us agitation and annoyance and irritability and all of those things. So menstrual cycle awareness is a #1 remedy for the premenstrual disturbances that tend to show up.
Now, if I may as well, a lot of my girls ask for mainly 2 things. A lot of self-love, which you're saying is, day 27 to 29-ish, right? And I also would say, in my personal opinion, in my menstrual phase, it's all about my self-love. Everybody else is second, specifically at my menstrual phase. And that's what I've noticed. And another thing is that a lot of my girls want to find their purpose. And I feel like menstrual cycle awareness is a way to be able to find your calling, to find your purpose, and really get in tune with the universe. Am I correct in saying that?
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Okay, cool. I'd love to know your answer. Okay?
Exactly. In our other conversation with you, we're going to talk about the inner seasons of the cycle, and we'll go into some more with that. But this is a perfect moment, Alexandra, for you to talk about the benefits of cycle awareness, because
yes, I was going to
touched on some there.
It's the royal route to yourself. And when a woman is connected to her menstrual cycle, she's connected to herself. So you want to think of cycle awareness as like this lifeline you're holding on to that keeps you plugged into you. And when you're doing that, then you're less buffeted by all the stuff of the world. Because you're connected to yourself, you know more about yourself, what your needs are, how your energy is, and you're able to you can be clearer about your boundaries. So one of the things that immediately happens, I was thinking of this self-love you brought up. The moment women start to do cycle awareness, they start to become kinder with themselves. We say it's like inner kindness and inner sweetness starts to grow. And that's a form of self-acceptance. It's like this lovely inner gentleness with oneself. So cycle awareness builds inner kindness, and with that, a strengthening sense of self. So you're learning to hold your own, and you're able to assert your boundaries more congruently and clearly. And actually that premenstrual time is very much to do with boundary issues. It's like a woman has sort of got too much is being asked of her. People go, pulling at her, and she just goes, no, reacts. And if you're practicing cycle awareness, you have much more presence of mind. So it's like a presence. You're really building mindfulness, real presence with yourself, so that when you come into that premenstrual phase, you are really mindful of your limits, of how much you can do. And so you don't cross that boundary into too much, doing too much. You get really smart. And this sort of adds up over time, this sort of inner kindness, this learning to assert your boundaries and so on. It really adds up to helping you to know who you are and what you're about. And then this big thing of the calling, which we'll go into in a lot more depth in the next call.
Okay, perfect.
But cycle awareness is laying the groundwork to get the goodies that we're going to talk about later.
So it's kind of 4 questions in one, but I'm trying to mingle them together so you girls can do your thing and figure out who wants to talk about what. But what about women that don't have a regular period, so they have an irregular period? What about women going through menopause or having birth control, or for that matter, even pregnant? What do you do with menopause, irregular period, birth control, and pregnancy? How does that work with menstrual cycle awareness?
Sjani, you take away first, and I'll do
Pick your battles.
All right, so I will pick irregular periods and pregnancy. And Alexandra, menopause is yours. So what was the other one?
Birth control.
The pill. Oh, that one's yours as well. You wrote a whole book on it, Alexandra. All right, so irregular cycles. Irregular cycles. I'm just going to be very brief here, but just track the cycle that you have. Even if your cycle doesn't fall into the kind of typical standard pattern, or it's unpredictable and changeable, just start charting. Just start charting from your first day of bleeding and just track your mood and energy. There is something about paying attention to your cycle that helps to create rhythm. And the other thing is just to create more rhythm in your life overall. This is just a sort of another way of supporting rhythm in your life, to go to bed at the same time, to try and eat your meals at the same time. This is another just simple way of supporting regularity. But there's a whole lot of health stuff that could and probably needs to be attended to, which we have some resources on in our Hormone Harmony course. So that's irregular cycles. Just track the cycle you have and just get to know your mood and energy. Yep.
For irregular period, I have to say that for my entire life since I was a teenager, I was always told that I had an irregular period. It would come and go for 2 or 3 months. I would get it 2 weeks, and then I'd get another 2 weeks later. And that's why they put me on birth control for 4 or 5 years. So that was interesting. I'm just like, no. And if I may say, this is the first time ever that I've tracked my cycle, and it got here on day 29. So I thought that was very interesting to notice. And it was the first time that it happened like right after. So I think menstrual cycle awareness has like helped me. I'll find out 3, 4, 5 months down the line. Yeah. But so far, being aware of it has made my body aware of it as well. Like, oh, it's time. Let's get moving.
Absolutely. That's such a nice example. Alexandra, maybe talk about the pill now, because that sort of led on, because, you know, Jasmine was given the pill to regulate her cycle. And of course, that isn't what the pill does.
The pill, I think it's a very loaded conversation talking about contraception, because it's really important for women to feel they have reliable contraception. But the trouble with hormonal contraception is that it damages our health, and it shuts down your menstrual cycle, and shutting down your menstrual cycle has a whole lot of health consequences. So you may be taking the pill or other hormonal contraception because you are needing contraception, but you may also be taking it, like you, for an irregular cycle, or because you have menstrual problems, bad pain or something like that. I just want to say there are alternatives for all that. And that's why we wrote the pill book. The pill, are you sure it's for you? So let's say you're on the pill right now and you're listening to this and thinking, oh, I want to practice cycle awareness. So what we suggest is that you practice you practice cycle awareness with your pill-induced cycle. It's not going to have the same magic as the menstrual cycle, because it just levels things out. But it'll start to get you thinking cyclically with yourself, and not thinking like you have to be the same all the time. And so that's what we recommend, actually. And if you're on the injection, as Sjani was, and so there's no rhythm at all, you could just chart with the phases of the moon. So new moon is day 1. New moon is day 1. So you can chart using that. But if you're on the pill, just take day 1 of taking the pill as your day 1. Well, you have a breakthrough bleed on the pill. It is not it's not like a normal menstrual bleed. No. Never think that it is. It's just a breakthrough bleed because of withdrawing from the hormones. But you could use that as your day 1, and then just chart from that, just to get the idea of being cyclical. And then you may find that in attending to yourself like this, you might then start to think, well, maybe I'd like to try alternatives for myself. And we have, as I say, lots of resources to support women.
All right. And then the next one would be pregnancy, Sjani?
Pregnancy. All right, I'll be very brief here.
Yeah.
But there's a lot, it's a whole other conversation. But menstrual cycle awareness really prepares and supports you for pregnancy and childbirth and mothering. I've got 2 daughters, and I can say for sure that really getting to know my cycle and practicing cycle awareness built these capacities in me that's really supported and sustained me through this huge initiation of becoming a mother. Once you conceive, you are no longer in the menstrual cycle pattern holding anymore. That falls away. You're now in a new kind of creative arc, and it's the journey of growing the baby and birthing the baby and early motherhood. And of course, your cycles don't return for some time. So you have this period of time where you step outside of the holding of the cycle and into a kind of new territory. And then, of course, your cycles return again at some point afterwards. But the cycle awareness practice is a profound preparation. It matures you, it psychologically readies you, and as I said, it gives you these capacities that one really needs, to trust your body, to trust yourself as far as birthing goes, to trust yourself as far as the choices you make as a mother, etc., etc., etc. There are so many benefits. I could just be sitting here all day, but you get the gist. So anybody who's thinking of having children, practice cycle awareness now, because it's really a way of readying yourself for motherhood at a very, very deep level. So that's motherhood, the motherhood journey.
That's beautiful. Is there a book that you would recommend, so if someone is pregnant or about to get pregnant or working on getting pregnant, that they can read on?
You mean as far as cycle awareness and pregnancy goes?
Yeah. Is there a book on that at all? Not yet?
Not yet, no. One to write.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah,
right.
That's one to write.
Okay. And the last one is menopause, Alexandra.
Yes, menopause. Now, again, this is a huge topic. And the thing about menopause is that you are coming to the end of your menstruating years. So there's been something going on in your menstruating years that's been building and preparing you for menopause. So it's sort of right and proper then that the cycle should stop, because you're stepping into a wholly new territory. Now, menopause is a transition between worlds. It's a transition between cycling, your menstruating years, and your years where you no longer have a cycle, but you've got to go through this sort of great psychological shift. So when you're in the middle of menopause, you are really off all maps, and you need a completely different kind of support. And we have some resources on our online programs on menopause, and we've even got a great video on our Facebook page for women. Just there's so much. That's another book. So menopause requires a whole other conversation about what goes on there, but you are off all usual maps. But the thing is, if you are in your 40s now, and even in your late 40s, and thinking, oh, what's the point of doing cycle awareness? I'm going to be going through menopause. Don't think that. Think cycle awareness, because you need to. Cycle awareness is going to really ground you in yourself and strengthen something, a sort of psychological strength, a self-care. You'll get a lot of insight about yourself, and this is what you need as you come up to menopause. You don't want to turn up at menopause unconnected to yourself. That's what makes it so hideous. But if you're doing cycle awareness and you arrive at menopause, you are in some measure prepared, and you kind of rise to meet it, because it is initiatory. But if you are post-menopause, like you feel like you've sort of come out the other side, and this is me because I'm post-menopause, I pay attention to the moon phases, and I do it in a very low-key way. I always know roughly where the moon is. So we're on about day 5 now of the moon cycle, and I love how I feel at the dark of the moon and new moon, and it's an echo of what I used to feel when I was menstruating. It's so interesting. It's an echo. It's subtle, but it's almost like a little wink I give to it. It's like, oh yeah, it's a little hint, that memory of how of menstruating, and I quite like the moon as a container, because when you lose your menstrual cycle, initially it feels like, oh, help, how do I orient my life? And then after a while, you know exactly how to do it. But I still love this connection to the moon and to the seasons of the year. I feel how I'm affected, as we're moving into fall now, or autumn, as we say in England, and how that shifts my psyche and the kinds of and how it shifts my emotional world and what gets awoken in me. And then I'll have and then that's layered with the moon. So it is this lovely kind of intimacy with life. When you're connected to cycles, you have an intimacy with a greater life, I think, with nature and so on. So postmenopause women, chart by the moon, if you like this. Menopause women, hold on tight. Take, above all, I just want to say to menopause women, listen and honor what you're feeling. You are not going mad. Have a journal in which you write it all down. You are not going mad. It will feel like madness because a lot of extreme things come up. You're not going mad, but you do need to contain and hold and really take counsel with yourself and nobody else. That doesn't mean you don't go and get information, but the ultimate counsel is with yourself now. That would be my just quick little thing to menopause.
That was beautiful. And honestly, I'll be honest, I'm 23, and the idea of menopause kind of has freaked me out before, right? And been like, okay, how am I supposed to live without this cycle, right? That technically I was for 4 to 5 years. And I guess I had an echo of what you would say, right? So that was very interesting. Thank you, Alexandra. And I have one more question for the end of this recording that I feel will connect all women and really get us going, even with our children and teens in our lives. So how do we share this awareness, this menstrual cycle awareness, with other females and our own children and teens? What do you recommend?
Over to you, Sjani.
I'm just like, nope, I'm not handling that one.
Yeah, you know what? It's an interesting question, because I think when you start to chart your cycle and you discover the power of it and actually how empowering and life-changing it is, you just want to tell everyone. And we suggest, yes, great, do. However, being evangelical about things tends to not go down very well. So the thing that I find works really well is just to bring it into ordinary, everyday conversation. Just, oh yeah, how you doing today? Oh, well, I'm all right. I'm day 23, so I'm feeling a little bit, inward and quiet. You just drop it in like it's part of how you, orientate yourself in the world. I think that is a lovely way just to weave it into your community and into your friendships, and people will be curious and they'll ask you questions, and then you can go about telling them more. And in family life, it's really nice. We'll talk with you in our other conversation about the inner seasons, but just to bring that framework in. Like, I've got 2 small daughters. Talking about my inner seasons, I was saying to her, she jumped on me this morning, and I'm day 24, and I went, oh, my breasts are really tender. She's like, why are tender. I said, I'm in my inner autumn, and my whole body starts to feel tender. And I just start to feel a bit like, oh. So, you know, little things like that, I think, are really nice ways. And share Wild Power with people. Share our book, Wild Power, because there's, you know, the whole story is in there, exactly. And it's a lovely way to pass the information on without, you know, chewing the ear of people, which is very tempting to do. And what we find is when women get excited about this work, they'll end up having conversations about the menstrual cycle at bus stops, in the lift, at the checkout counter. But suddenly it's like you become a radar for menstruality, and suddenly the conversation just, really, you'll just find that everyone is suddenly asking you about your menstrual cycle. It'll happen.
I can't wait for that to happen. That's going to be an interesting story. All right, perfect. So, Sjani?
It is the flavour of the month, Jaslyn. Now. Menstruation is in the press a lot.
Yeah.
It really shifted 2 years ago when Newsweek did on their front cover, "There will be blood, get over it." The crimson tide is turning. I can't remember how it went. The crimson tide, "There will be blood, get over it." And it was a male editor, and their main article was all about menstruation. I know, wow, front cover.
How
Bold words, there will be blood. So it's out there now. It's not quite the taboo it was. I mean, it's still taboo, but there is something that's really shifting. So it gets easier and easier.
We're working on it, and I'm hoping with, you know, doing these recordings and sharing it with more, over 500 different women and more for that matter, after they keep looking through this, that we can really start to grow this community. So thank you, Alexandra and Sjani, for going over the menstrual cycle awareness. If any of my girls have any questions, I'm going to send them over to Hormone Harmony, which I know is your course, and Red School for that matter in general. Okay, perfect.
Great.
Right.
That's a good place to start. Yeah.
And we should add that Hormone Harmony is free. So
yes, of course.
Don't grab the opportunity.
I will be talking about more of Hormone Harmony with Sjani and Alexandra in the next recording. So just a heads up, when you girls see the next recording, it's going to be about the 4 internal seasons and pretty much going over, you know, pre-ovulation, ovulation, premenstrual, and the menstrual phases and what happens in each one and in the days, more specific. So get ready for that recording. Okay, we'll see you soon. Mwah.
Bye-bye.